everyone. Welcome to Being Becoming. My name is Micaiah, and for today's episode, we have some very handsome men. I know a lot of my other episodes, if you've been watching, have been very, very female heavy. So today I wanted to invite some men to talk about toxic masculinity and Black boy joy. So before we get started, I do want to just say this, of course, is not a bashing session. Again, there's going to be 4 guys talking about this topic. And this is also not an issue that just Black men deal with. Toxic masculinity is an issue that males in general deal with. So like stated before, you will be hearing from an all-male panel on this topic. Of course, this is going to promote self-growth and reflection. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss out on the future videos. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Being Becoming.
Hi, my name is Jamar Bryant. I go by Jupiter. I live in Newark, New Jersey, work in New York. For a charter school, I work as a special projects manager. Passions are fashion, PR, and advertising. And yeah.
Hi, I'm Ryan Dixon from Louisville, Kentucky. Currently work at the Herald Leader, which is a newspaper in Lexington, Kentucky. I graduated from University of Kentucky with communication and marketing. Currently married, and I like going to the gym. One of my passions right now.
Hey, yo, my name is Brandon Haskins. I am originally from Louisville, Kentucky, born and raised. I currently live in Nashville, Tennessee. I graduated from Tennessee State University, and I currently work at Tennessee State University as a college completion coach, working with first-time students transitioning from high school to college. I'm also married, 2 kids, a boy and a girl, well, a girl and a boy, that order. I'm also a 3rd-year doctoral student at Trevecca Nazarene University here in Nashville. So I like learning and getting degrees so that I can get more money.
Hey.
I feel you with that.
Right.
My name is Isaac Epps. I'm also from Louisville, Kentucky. I graduated from the University of Kentucky in 2018, spring 2018. I currently work in the business of finance for a train company. I think right now my biggest hobbies is just really hanging out with my family. So being in Atlanta, it wasn't the most ideal situation for me. I didn't want to move out of Louisville, so being back during quarantine has been a blessing. So that's my biggest hobby is being around my family.
So gentlemen, thank you so much for agreeing to talk about this topic with me. As you guys are all aware, we're talking about toxic masculinity. So for the audience who may not have ever heard of that term before or just needs a better definition of the topic, toxic masculinity is defined by adherence to socially constructed traditional male gender roles that consequently stigmatize and limit the emotions boys and men can comfortably express while elevating other emotions as violent, unemotional, and sexually aggressive. Traits that are traditionally viewed as masculine, at least by Western society, may include strength, courage, independence, leadership, and assertiveness. So you guys hearing that definition, I mean, I already have my own thoughts about what toxic masculinity is and how it shows up, but what are you guys' first initial thoughts after hearing that definition?
Yeah, I guess toxic masculinity to me, just hearing that definition, it's kind of like how we raise, at least, let me make sure I say this in the very, very beginning, that I don't want to make my experience or anything I say the Black experience or the typical Black man's experience, because we're all raised differently. But at least from my experience growing up and the scenarios I've been, whether it's elementary school, college, whatever, there's a certain way that we raise our boys and what's okay and what's not okay, right? So where, my sister might get in trouble for staying out too late, but if I were to do the same, I would not have the same consequences. So small subtle things that you think about, when a boy's crying, they'll tell you, stop crying like a little girl, or stop being soft, or he's soft. I mean, that's the definition. When I hear it, that's just how boys are raised by both male and women. It's just, for some reason, society has decided that this is the characteristic of a real man. And reality is just what is the definition of a man, right? We're born free. God made us free. So what's the difference between a man and a woman? I don't know.
So when I hear the definition in itself is toxic. because when you think of a definition, it's supposed to leave someone with answers or a roadmap. But when a person wasn't raised with a father or wasn't raised with that male role or male figure, and they go and read that definition, they can actually do a lot more harm to themselves psychologically, mentally, emotionally, all type of different trauma, and end up in different types of traumas throughout lives trying to become this role of masculinity. And I don't want to say victim of that, but I definitely grew up without my father. Didn't meet my father until I was 22. So, 26, I'm sorry. All of my life, I've been trying to identify what this role, what is this male role, what is that supposed to be? How does that supposed to look like? And so when we go deeper, I'll tell you how I overcame that. But like I said, that definition alone is toxic because it does not provide a very clear identity for someone who doesn't have that support growing up to really be a man.
Piggyback off what Brandon said, I agree. I feel like the definition is very like negative and kind of daunting. I think that like just hearing the term over the last, like I feel like I haven't heard the term toxic masculinity until like the last like 5 years. But I feel like whatever that is, I want to be like the opposite of what a toxic masculinity is, and like finding that middle ground of like, but I am assertive and I am like some of these things I fall within the definition, but I don't want to be toxic while in my masculinity, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So I feel like there's a lot of gray area within that definition. Like I could check off a few of the boxes, but other boxes I don't check.
That's interesting. What all of you guys said, but Ryan, when you said you feel like that's a hot topic that has really just come out in the last few years, I really agree with you. Like the first time I heard that topic was in college, was in a genders women's studies course. Like I had never heard of the topic outside of that. And even asking people, when I was asking people if they'd be interested in this topic in an interview, hearing about it, a lot of women who I asked, a lot of men who I asked was like, what is that? And I had to kind of provide like that basic definition that we just talked about. And it can be very toxic.
Add to it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my wheels are still turning. And it's so toxic to the point where it has landed other men, fathers, I should say, let me be specific. It has landed other fathers behind jail and in prison, and now they can't be an appropriate father to their children. So now we have just this cycle that is just reoccurring. And to me, I feel like this whole masculinity title is defined by the world to keep us men oppressed. There's so much more to a man than just his physique or how good he is in the bedroom. You know, I mean, when I just looking at my brothers here on this call, like we got someone in PR, we got someone in communications, you know, we're greater than just being this dominant figure, and which also comes off very threatening. And then you have to add race and color behind it. You know, it makes it even more difficult and more toxic. I agree with what Ryan said. I just don't want to be toxic in my masculinity.
Well, I think that, and you can make sure you can steer me in the right way if I'm hearing you wrong, but I think that it's important not to like flip what the word means for those who are being oppressed. Because technically, to me, I feel like toxic masculinity is the same thing that kept women from being able to vote, right? It's the same thing. It's the same reason why women are being paid less than men. It's real. It's real. Toxic masculinity is real. Sexism is real. The way that we treat women, at least the way that is, you know, the things that you can hear, right? The things that are done to women is real. And I don't want to take away from any woman's, you know, what they're going through by taking that word and kind of flipping it to a way that's it's oppressing men. Like it's not oppressing men. It's looking at the reality of the situation. We are in a toxic situation when our women are not treated equally.
And I I agree, but I also believe that goes into roles, right? So there's the role of the man, and then there's the role of the woman, but it's not that we're equal, but it's more so that we complement each other. So how do we complement? And I do agree that terminology, toxic masculinity, has oppressed women as well. But I was just more so speaking from a male, just men, period. I feel like it has really hurt our society. And as we think about generations and legacies, it affects that even the more. So I do agree with you, but I was just coming from the angle of just the male role, because I feel like it's hard. Like, I don't believe in, like, Father's Day is coming up, right? So, of course, there's going to be a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to say Happy Father's Day to my mother. That's fine, because moms did step up, but they should not have had to. So what was there? What caused them? They weren't created to be fathers. They was created to be mothers. And just like the male was created to be a father. So what was that cause? And that, for me, is this notion of masculinity. What is not really clear. It's not a clear definition of it. But there's a roadmap that leads to it.
I guess everyone has a different roadmap, I guess, are you trying to say?
I agree. Masculinity is totally defined differently for each man. I don't believe that every man has to abide by one standard definition of masculinity. That's not true, because, that's just not true. I believe there's categories. There's different things, such as, accepting your responsibility and being assertive, those different things. But I don't believe, if you're not this, if you're not that, if you're not this, then you're not a man. Like, I just don't. It doesn't sit well with my
I think they agree with you, though, right? Because, like, you said it right. There's different versions of masculinity. The version of masculinity that they're referring to is the toxic version of it. So you can have, whatever version you are. You can say, I have my financial masculinity, or singing masculinity. This is toxic masculinity. I think that is a version of masculinity.
Yeah, you guys, I want to jump in just real quick. So we're going to talk about all of that as we move forward in the conversation. I do think it's a two-sided coin, in the sense that, Isaac, you talked a lot about like how it affects women specifically, and then Brandon, you talked a lot about how it affects men as you're raising them and things of that nature, and just overall in the roadmap. So we're going to talk about all those topics within the questions, but I want to shift the conversation just quickly. Let's talk a little bit about how you each were raised. Who were you influenced by? Who influenced your manhood, in a sense? And what does that mean to you?
So for me, I was raised by my mother. My dad, I'm from Louisville originally, born and raised. And growing up in Louisville, my dad, he lived in Newburgh. I lived in the West End. So, but he always had some type of excuse as to why he couldn't see me. So even though I lived in the same city as my father, I really never saw him. From like elementary school and middle school, I played sports just so I could see him, because that was the only thing he would show up to. Because for me, I was more so into like artsy stuff, so like dance and singing. So like my mom would always come to all this stuff, but my dad would never come. But then when I got to high school, I more so leaned towards the artsy stuff. So I really never saw my dad ever really in high school. And then I had a falling out with him in college. I didn't speak to him for like 4 years. And now we're kind of like working to amend our relationship. But pretty much like my mom, she's always just been my rock. I think her and my dad separated when I was 2. We moved in with my grandfather because he had a stroke. So then my mom became his main caregiver because he became paralyzed. So my mom would just work 2 jobs. And then like when I would get home from school, I would take care of my grandfather. So like I would be like, I think 3rd grade, I would just be cooking for my grandfather, or if he had to use the bathroom, help put him to bed and stuff like that, all the way until he passed when I think I was like 11 or 12. So that was pretty much how I was raised in. And then as far as like my male influences, I had a lot of uncles because my mom was one of 20. But like as I got older, a lot of them started dying either from like natural causes or just because of the lifestyle they lived. And then I had like some uncles who were just in and out of prison, so I really never got to see them unless they were getting out of prison or getting out of jail, and they was like on house arrest, and they would have to stay with us for a little bit. Or if they got out and needed somewhere to stay, like my house was always like a rotating door for somebody staying whether it was like some uncles, some cousins, extended family. Like my mom was just like always taking care of everybody. So it was annoying. but you know, it's like that's just my mom's. Like she's the matriarch of my family ever since my grandmother died. So she always just takes care of everybody.
I want to ask you a quick question before we move on to the other gentleman. So you're deciding that you wanted to play sports, something that you weren't as interested in as the arts, because you wanted your dad to come see that. Like what kind of, how did you know that was the only thing he was going to see? And then how did that influence you? Like, how did that impact you?
Well, I knew that he wasn't going to come to it because he was just very candid about it. He was like, I'm not coming to that shit. That shit's for girls. You need to do some manly shit. You need to play football. You big as hell, blah, 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 blah. Because I was always big for my age, especially like middle school and high school. Like I was real stocky. And then I was tall at that. So everybody be like, oh, you need to be playing football. Oh, you need to be doing this. You need to be doing that. So that was like my father's mentality from like day one. He had a son. He wanted his son to be playing basketball, to be playing soccer, to be playing football, to be playing baseball. He just wanted me to just be doing all of that stuff. So in my mind, I'm like, the only time I'm going to see my father is if I'm doing something that he likes, which is sports. And literally, that was the only time I saw him.
Well, I was family adopted at 4 months old. My mother gave me away to another family, a friend of the family, so that I wouldn't go with the state because of her lifestyle that she was living, and because I was a one-night stand baby. I can laugh about it now, but I found that out recently because I was a one-night stand baby. My mom and dad didn't have the best of relationships, so it was a birthday celebration, oops, my bad, and my mom got stuck with me. So because she was still involved in the street life, she chose to give me away so that I wouldn't get taken. And I was raised in a house with 6 women and 1 male. And that guy, he had mental challenges, so it was just like I was the only guy in the entire home. Faced a lot of obstacles, a lot of verbal, mental, and physical abuse from all of the ladies in the house, which left me, felt like I was stranded on an island by myself. No one would ever listen to the story or listen to what I had going through. Went through a lot of different things throughout middle school and high school. And then I joined an organization called Young Life in Louisville. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but I joined Young Life. And just being involved with them, I had a mentor named Andre Martin, and I was able to talk with him, and he kind of started the process of healing. I didn't fully heal until, I want to say, my sophomore year of college, when I started getting really involved with my godfather, who I later met later in high school, and a minister at the church that I attended. And from there, that's when life started changing for me. And at the age of 25, that's the accurate age, I met my father for the very first time. I was very, very emotional. I was excited. I cried and everything, but he was not as emotional, and that hurt me the most because I was thinking like, whoa, you knew I was here all along, blah, 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 and you're not that excited to see me. All you want is money from me, not knowing that he was still sick and on drugs and using as well. So as far as I've been on this whole, defining masculinity for a while. And to be honest, it wasn't until I joined a men's group in my church that I was able to really find, like I said, that map, those key indicators, and then started to define it for myself, look within and take an introspective look in my personal life and say, Brandon, who are you? And who are you to others? As far as influence, I would say Jesus Christ, because that was my learning how he was viewed, how his masculinity was viewed in the Bible really just helped me shape my understanding and my definition of masculinity.
I'll go next. I'm going to offend any of you guys after I say this, but I feel really fortunate the way that I grew up because my life was polar opposite to the 2 stories I just heard. I feel very fortunate that I did have both of my parents in the household. My dad was my influence that I looked up to. He was, very like a pillar in my community. All of his friends were kind of the same. They had families and wives, and they took care of their responsibilities. I grew up in a very privileged household. I would definitely say sheltered, a Christian household with my mom and my dad and my sister. My example was just my father and just everything that he did for me. He's vocal, but he shows you more than what he tells you, and you just look how he operates. I don't know anybody that can say anything bad about my dad, and if they did, they probably are lying, because I could get thousands of people that would say 100 nice things about him. That's probably one of the things I like most about my dad. But yeah, I don't want to. I feel bad after. I mean, I know you guys have your own stories, and I commend you guys because you guys are very strong men, obviously. But I had a different story.
Don't feel bad.
But no, it's just really commending that you guys are here and very successful, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, I think everybody's experiences is what leads them there. So we're all fortunate to have our experiences. My mother, so I grew up in a kind of a similar situation, I guess. My mother and father had kids at a very, very young age. So my mother had her first child when she was 15. She had me when she was 19, and my youngest sister when she was 20. So she was a teenage mother of 3 before she was 21. But by the age of 26, she purchased the home that she still currently owns here in Charlotte, Kentucky. So I've always, pretty much my entire life, have known about home ownership, being financially stable, credit scores, everything that I've learned about just taking care of business, being a hard worker, and just being consistent. I've learned from my mother. Unfortunately, my father couldn't be a part of my life. And it was mistakes in his life, but also just the system within itself. I'm not going to put full blame on the tragedies of his life. But he ended up dying when I was in high school. So I can only recall meeting him once. Don't really know what he looked like. But the incident that caused his life to end, unfortunately, changed his face so much that I honestly couldn't recognize him. So, I couldn't, if I heard his voice today, I wouldn't know a thing. But, as tragic as it sounds, it also has shaped my view and my, how hard I went to work, because I thought it was extremely important for Black men to be viewed in a better light. Just the way my father died, they threw the whole negative train at him, and I seen firsthand, scenarios like Breonna Taylor's, and the influences of being a man for me was the influence that makes me a man, I guess, mainly my uncle. He's a great guy. He, rocket scientist. He used to fly me out to DC to go meet him, and he used to teach me the difference between what's that the thing in Baby Boy, what's it called? Guns and Butter, right? So he was a great guy. Jesus, hands down. I love the fact that he was so compassionate. He was non-judgmental, and it reminds me that, like, everyone should act like Jesus. So Jesus, hands down. And honestly, my mother really taught me that you have to take care of your responsibility. So I've always just been responsible.
Well, you guys, thank you for sharing all of your stories. Isaac, I think you kind of said this, but or someone said it. Your stories really are what make you guys. I see 4 handsome, intelligent, excuse my French, got their shit going or together men in front of me. And I'm so appreciative that you guys were able to join me on this conversation. So thank you so much. So let's move forward. What does being a man actually mean to you?
I feel like I have a quick answer for that. I feel like a man for me is just someone that takes responsibility for their own actions and is responsible for themselves, can control their emotions the way they best know how, and someone that just like gets work done. That's like the short version of what a man is to me. It's like someone that just gets it done.
I agree with Ryan. I believe that being a man to me is having the courage to accept full responsibility for whatever actions performed. I also believe the scripture reference for that is 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I thought as a child, I acted as a child. But when I became a man, I put away my childish things. And for me, that has really helped distinguish, and I know you're going to talk about it later, but distinguish my boy traits versus my manly traits. So that to me, I mean, hands down, courage and accepting responsibility is what being a man to me means.
Brandon, I'm glad you brought it up about the boy. I have another question for you guys, probably requested most by the ladies. So a lot of women, they'll call men boys when they don't like how they act and happen and they don't like how it was resulted. What is the difference between a boy and a man to you guys?
Well, I have a strong dislike for what I'm calling a boy.
Mm-hmm.
Historically.
I have a strong dislike,
I said historically, I don't like the word boy either.
That too. That's what I was going to say. 2 reasons. Historically, and then just I'm far from a boy. Just on so many different levels. You know, it's a mindset. It's someone that is viewed as a child, pretty much. You're a lesser, you're a weaker vessel, you're learning. And we're always constantly learning, but it's learning in a different format, a different stage of life. You're not seen as responsible. You're not seen as a person that takes initiative or is assertive in his ways. And so when you compare that with a man, I mean, I just think everything is polar opposite, but it becomes offensive when women or a white brother or sister says that, because I'm clearly a grown ass man. Like, I'm far from the boy spectrum. So, but you're purposely emasculating me, my bad. You're purposely emasculating me because you dislike a choice that I made, or you dislike the color of my skin. Because back in the historical days, it was, oh, you a nigga, so black, you a boy, you know. And excuse me, I don't know if this should make the cut, but I'm just saying that's really what it boils down to. So it becomes offensive when there is a grown man and you're telling him he's a boy.
Okay, I'm going to push you guys just a little bit for the people who answered, and anyone else who wants to talk, who answered, what does it mean to be a man to you? So just coming from my perspective, every trait that you described is the same thing I can describe about a woman. So what's the difference?
That was a curveball.
Right.
That was good. Well, that was good.
It's a solid point. I always wondered that as well, because when you're growing up, when you only have a single parent, right? Your parent has to be both your mother and your father. And to say that, you know, men have to have these certain traits, and so if these men don't have if only men have these traits, and a man is absent, then if a woman's taking care of all these kids on her own, that she's incapable of doing it. But that is false. Black women have been taking care of kids and having successful kids for a very, very long time since slavery. Black women have raised kids. So it's just like, I don't know. That is a solid question. What is it? To me, a man is whatever you want to be, right? If you decide a man to you is this, then that's what you want to be. My definition of my man is who I want to be, but it doesn't have to be who you want to be. As long as I'm not interfering with your life. That's just how I see it.
And I do want to say before we go forward, I am a person who believes in certain gender roles. So I'm married to me and my husband, there's certain things that I may do that he may not do. Even being raised, I was also raised in a 2-parent household. My dad, there were certain things he wouldn't allow me to do. I may not agree with a lot of things that he has said, hey, you're not going to do. Like, I'll give you an example. When I was little, I really wanted to learn to play basketball. My dad would not teach me. My dad was a basketball coach, would not teach me how to play basketball because he used to tell me, yes, he used to tell me basketball's not for girls. You need to go and find something else to do. Even though it's a WNBA, all this other stuff. My dad's since grown, there's nothing I can't accomplish that my dad's always telling me, Micaiah, you can accomplish anything that you want to do. But I mean, there's certain things that not just our culture, again, this is not a black man's issue. Like, toxic masculinity is an issue in general, but I mean, that's why I asked the question, like, what is you guys' definition of a man? Because there are probably some things specifically that men do that maybe women aren't able to do. But everything that you guys described to me, I was like, that sounds like something I can do.
I don't know.
I feel like there's not then. I feel like we're equal, but
On body
separate.
parts.
Like I feel like we can both hold the strong attributes of a man and a woman, but still have our own different roles. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I feel like there isn't one then. We all are just equal. I don't know.
Well, so what Isaac was saying, I believe that comes from the absence of a man, right? I believe women are strong. I believe that they are able to step up and they can do it all. But should they have to is the question. And that's my perspective. My wife has said, "Oh, I can do that. Leave me alone. I got this." And I'm like, no. Like, that's not your responsibility. It's my God-given responsibility to ensure that you're protected, that these kids are protected, and that there's a roof over their head. I'm providing. You can provide too. I'm all for it. Get your bag. You know what I'm saying? But understand this. There's not a decision that supersedes me or God. You know what I'm saying? Because there is a hierarchy of responsibility. Because at the end of the day, if you go out here, you make a false move, whatever, blah, 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 I'm held responsible for that. Not you. My mom and my family and your dad and your family is going to ask me, Brandon, why did you let her do that? You know, so to me, yes, it's all similar, but there's things that women, I would never forget, just a couple weeks ago, my wife was like, I really just want to go get my nails done. I'm tired of being quarantined. I was like, oh, that was I like hearing you say stuff. I don't want to sit around here you talk about, I want to play, no offense to you, but I want to go kick rocks. Like, that's not what I want to hear you say. Like, I want to hear you talk about, you being a woman, being feminine. I want to hear you gossip on the phone with your girlfriends. Like, that's what I expect from you, because you are, but biblically, the weaker vessel, not in the state of that you're weak, but that there is a place for me. There's a need for me as a man. Because if we're equal, then you don't need me.
Right.
You don't need me as your husband. You don't need me as your protector. If we're equal, you can protect you. If we're equal, you can provide for yourself. But then what's the point of marriage? What's the point of union? And that's where I believe it separates, and the roles are distinguished. It's not all about gender roles, but it's more so about responsibility. Man, it is a responsibility for you to take care of your wife, provide for your wife, provide for your children, be present. And the role in that can look totally different, So it's a lot of semantics in it, but I feel like we're not equal, because if we're equal, then there's no place for me to be here. You can do it all by yourself.
I agree.
Right. Well, I think that Micaiah made a solid point. You said that there's roles in your relationship, right? And it is that, to me, yeah, there's roles in my relationship with my girlfriend, right? But I don't think it's because she's a male and she's a female, right? It's just because she decided that's what she wants to do, and I decided that's what I want to do, right?
So do you open the door for her, or does she open the door for you?
I mean, we open our own doors. We're capable. It's just different for each relationship, right? Like, my girlfriend doesn't want all that. She wants me to respect her as her equal. So, like, and then also, like, I don't expect her to, like, cook all the time. Like, I enjoy cooking, it's fine. But, I'm not the best at cleaning, so it's cool that she likes to clean. It's not because she's a woman. It's because she's 20 times better than me than cleaning. And I take care of the finances, not because I'm a man, it's because I decided to get a major in finance. Like, that's what roles are to me. I don't think that women should be, I think that just like how I don't want her to define what I should be as a man, I don't want to tell her that this is what you should be as a woman. Like, that's the problem in our society. We keep telling women what they should be and what they can't be, and what they can't earn and what they can't do and what door they can't open. Like, we need to stop that. If a woman decides she want to play basketball, let her play basketball. If a woman decides she want to be assertive, let her be assertive. If a woman decides that she want to take care of her own, Let her take care of her own. It's not our role to do that.
Yeah, but you're not gonna take care of your own, and I'm there. Then what's the point of me? Like you be by yourself then. Like
Play another role. Your role clearly it's not your role to do that for that particular woman. She got her stuff together. She doesn't need you for that. She needs you for something else. Pay attention to what she needs you for. Stop trying to solve some problem that that might not need to be solved. I mean, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I like where we're going with this conversation. This is what I wanted. I wanted us to dive a little bit deeper. I agree with everything everyone said. Like, there's nothing that anyone said where I'm like, okay, you were off. I do think we need to take the thought of roles out of the situation.
Thank you.
But I like what Brandon said when he talks about like provider, protector, things of that nature, biblically, that men are. So that's what I kind of focus on.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to finish your sentences, but I think where the issue has come into our society, Isaiah, is that Isaac. I'm sorry, you got a new name now, Isaiah. But I think where the issue has came is the fact that we attach, just like they attach physique and different things to the term man. It's the same thing in other things, other areas. Like, it's not all about roles, because I'm the cleaner in the house. My wife will mess up the entire house and won't think twice about cleaning it. And even if I ask her to clean it, she's going to go in there, spray a little bit, wipe it down a little bit, but still expect me to come in there and get it all together. So I truly believe roles are truly defined by personality. I don't believe that roles define whether you're the man or you're the woman. What defines that is you being you and accepting your responsibility. I am not raising my daughter to be a masculine daughter. Like, I'm just not going to sit down and say, you need to be a man. No, I'm saying you are a lady, so you respect yourself, you keep yourself well, you keep yourself presentable. There's different things. And I told my wife,
tell her that someone needs to provide for her?
Say it again?
Will you also tell her that someone needs to provide for her when she grows up? Because that's what the role of a man is, to be a provider. That's a totally different conversation.
For me right now, that's not a conversation that we're having. However, she will know later in life that at the end of the day, as there is a role of a man, and you can provide for yourself, because my wife can take care of her own self. She does not need my income. But at the end of the day, you will have to submit yourself to another man. And I understand that as a father, and I think that's where things, when you look at the Bible biblically, like, that's just things that we got to accept. That's our role. That's what has been done in the past days, So right now, I'm not teaching that. Right now, I'm teaching her how to be a kid, enjoy herself, enjoy ballet, whatever you want to do. And I'm going to wrap this up because Ryan raised his hand. But I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, role. It's just the role piece is just the confusing. That's the enemy in all of this.
So I think on both sides of both your arguments, I feel like in each relationship, there has to be a foundation of respect. And respect looks, and roles look different in everybody's relationships. If you have a relationship. Because some, like Isaac said, the opening doors thing isn't something big. It's big for me. Like, my wife probably doesn't really even care that I do, but I assert myself to open her door because that's just something that's just second nature to me. But some women, they don't care, and that's a respect and a rule, or I guess an unsaid rule in a relationship. So I think has to be just a common respect on both sides.
All right, so let's move on. I think we talked a little bit about history, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. So what do you guys feel like is the history of masculinity specifically? Let's talk a little bit about slavery and the notion to try to emasculate and break the Black man.
Ooh, child.
Dang, you just...
Well, first of all, with history, we weren't even human. So we had to,
we were animals.
Yeah, so we had to
big black animals.
We had to get to the level of them not seeing us as creatures or as something that just works the fields. I guess we're automatically talking to white people now. So with breaking down the white, I mean, we started at the bare minimum, at the floor of where they thought of us in humanity. Like, they thought of their dogs more highly than they did us. So I feel like they broke us down when we got off the boat. Like it wasn't
Immediately.
anything to them because we were shared. So assuming we've had 400 years of slavery and oppression, there's so many layers of how they've broken us down, from lynchings to burnings to, you name it, they've done it. Like, it's like there's nothing they haven't done to break us down, but we're resilient people. And
that's the piece that scares a lot of people, is the fact that we can bounce back.
You can see how in history we're doing right now, in current history, how strong we are in numbers, and how it really is scaring them to see the power that we have in being the minority.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that we can talk about with that, but I'll have somebody else have the floor.
No, I think you right on. Although there were measures put in place, I agree with what Ryan just said. Although there was measures put in place to beat us down and to strip us, I think we never lost the notion. I don't think it was ever a point in time where we just lost our identity completely, because I believe at some points we probably gave up and was like, you know what, I'm done fighting this race. But I don't ever think it was a point of disrespect, because that's what influenced a lot of people to fight back, was the fact, well, wait a minute, I'm a man, you a man. Like, I'm not a boy. Like, I deserve freedom, so I'm gone. And, even still in the capturing of them, when you just watch the films, it's like they were so resilient, and to continue to fight. So I don't believe that the identity of manhood was ever stripped from us, even though it was tried. Like, it was measures put in place to strip us of that. I don't ever think it was lost.
Do we think the reason I ask this question is because do we think Black men, were influenced by the notion of slavery, and that's where a lot of our gender roles came from? Because when you think about our history in Africa, we had kings, queens, women were doing things that men were doing over there, and ruling kingdoms and things of that nature. So do we get a lot of our gender roles, gender norms, toxic masculinity from slavery, learning what their relationships were, meaning that whoever the master or the white man was and their significant other or spouse? Did we learn?
I feel like positively and negatively. But you can go ahead, Isaac.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
I think that like with people that grew up with single parents, like that was in the structure as well. Like, they tore us apart from our families.
Yeah.
So, but I think that the roles of, the woman taking care of the house and, taking care of the kids was designed strictly in slavery. But I'm gonna let somebody else have the floor.
I can definitely say in my family, like, that whole notion of, like, this, I guess, the roles that Black men and Black women had during slavery, my family definitely tried to keep those traditions alive, especially like with my grandmother. Like, I remember, like, being younger and my grandmother was talking about, like, me being light skinned, and she was like, you always need to be presentable. You need to be like a well-groomed slave. And I was just like, but like, looking back on that conversation, I'd just be like, a well-groomed slave. Like, my grandmother was really like in that mentality. Like, when we would have family functions at the house, I would be trying to be in the kitchen, trying to learn how to cook or bake. And they would be like, oh, all the women and the girls need to only be in the kitchen. You need to be out there with the men, sit around the table, just stuff like that, or yard work. It was just always these forced old traditions down my throat. And it was just like always having to, I guess, live up to all of these expectations of what it is to follow all of these old rules, old unwritten rules. of what it is to be a man and to present yourself as a man. And it was just like somewhat like my aunt, uncle, grandfather, always trying to shove these traditions down my throat. So I feel like it just kind of depends on how you were raised, if those things from slavery still are prevalent in, I guess, in your life now.
So what happens if we do not, or you guys do not live up to society's expectation of men?
I feel like it puts you, like, if you don't meet the standard, it puts you back into that like boy category of like, oh, if you don't make this amount of money, oh, you're a boy. Oh, you don't have this education, or you have been incarcerated. Oh, you're not taking care of your business. It puts you in like a negative group. That's not what the positive man needs to be. I feel like that's what it does. It like rips us apart.
When you asked the question, I said so because I'm like, at the end of the day, there are so many different stipulations when it comes to the society, the world, about a man and what he does with his time, money, family, so forth. So we're clearly never going to equal up or level up to what they want. We're going to always make mistakes. And I think that is a piece of being a man. It's just, understanding your mistakes, living in and accepting your mistakes, and just working through it. So there are going to be times where I may not be able to I may not have the funds, or I may not be as present as I want to with my family, but that doesn't lessen my role or my predicament as a man. No, but that's what society has said. So to me, I'm just at the point where I really don't care. As long as I know that I am honoring my wife, I'm honoring my family, I'm honoring my children, and creating a legacy for the generations to come, that's all that matters to me. I really don't care what society has to say.
You know what you just said, Brandon, can you repeat that when you said if you honor your wife? Can you repeat that whole phrase?
As long as I'm honoring my wife, honoring my family, honoring my children, and creating a legacy for the next generation, that's all that matters to me as a man.
So is that, listening to that, does that sound kind of like a definition of what it means to be a man?
I would have to say so, yes. That's what I have created. That's the definition that I've recently created for myself, because I was, for years, going back and forth. Am I a man? Am I a man? How do I accept me? I'm not looking the part. I don't have muscles. I got a little fat on me. What? Am I performing well? And I just had to like literally sit down and just ask God, like, help me to understand, what it is to be a man at the end of the day. How was Jesus viewed? Jesus accepted responsibility. He rejected passivity, and he led courageously. That to me is what I believe that we are called to do as men, to lead our families, to reject passivity. Our boy traits are gone. We're no longer boys, we're men. So step up to the plate, own your mess, own your stuff, and then accept full responsibility. You created a child, be there for the child. You chose to be married, so be faithful. You chose to buy a house, so upkeep it. You may have to go, and if you don't want to mow the lawn, then pay for somebody to come and mow the lawn. Create a job for somebody else. That to me is just all that encompasses that, and that has helped me strip away society's view of masculinity or manhood.
And I also think that's like healthy too, because we're also all people. Now I feel like we need to, like, with this definition of what a man is, we also need to give ourselves like a little bit more grace of where we can mess up. Like, yeah. I feel like with men, it's like, okay, I messed up. It's like the end of the world. I gotta get, my wife together. I have to get everybody else in order, but still say, hey, it's okay to mess up. But it's the way that you respond to the mess up is how, I feel like that's the definition of what defines a man. How do you, hey, you might have not going to reply back to that quote unquote mess up in your life. Are you going to step up to the plate or are you not? I feel like that's what a man is.
Yeah. So let's move a little bit forward. I think we've talked about this a little bit, but I want to go a little bit deeper. How does your manhood show up in your relationships?
I guess it kind of goes back to the definition that you read at first, like some of those terms of like leader, being assertive, strength. Like I feel like as a man, you automatically just have to take on all of those roles and just be that person in the relationship. So I just feel like going into a relationship, you already have like a certain amount of pressure that you already put on yourself and a certain amount of expectation that you put on yourself. And then with your partner, it's like, okay, what expectations do you have of me? Like, what is it that you expect from a man?
For me, and not only just my relationship with my wife, but with my relationship with my friends, people I call family, learning to reject the passiveness that I could potentially have in the relationship. For example, I could shy away from a conversation or not like being told that I'm wrong. You know, those type of things that could make a relationship go south. You know, just I don't want to be responsible for this relationship failing. So I learned how to communicate. I learned how to talk and express my feelings, even if I'm upset. You know, I can express like, hey, you pissed me off. You know, you offended me. So now how do we work through that? And for me, a lot of times what I see in my relationship with my wife is sometimes in the past, sometimes we would get in an argument and she would be the one to be like, you know what, this conversation is done. I'm done. But it's like, no, we got to continue this conversation, but learn how to effectively communicate. You know, I can't be all high emotion. I can't, if I know it's a trigger for my wife to yell at her, then I don't need to be yelling. But that's me accepting responsibility as a man to say, you know, I love you and I respect you, so I'm not going to hit any of your trigger buttons. And to know when to close the conversation, right? Because sometimes we can keep things going purposely. But that's the passiveness. That's the kid in us, you know, but we just got to learn. And that's what I've done, you know. In every relationship, I kind of keep that neutral.
So how do you guys maintain and better yourself as men?
I spend a lot of time in prayer, and I also like focus on like my health to better myself. I feel like that's like just like something that's selfish just for me. But I feel like it also is something that could leave a legacy for my future kids that, hey, you need to be focused on like your health and well-being, sometimes more than like hanging out with your friends or like doing something else. I feel like I better myself when I'm selfish for my well-being. If that could be, you know, I ate well today, or oh, I went to the gym today, or I, you know, meditated, I read a book, or I did something just for me. I feel like that betters me like for the next day, and can lead a lasting impact for my wife, my family, for everybody, to just keep up with myself.
I agree. I recently, recently, once the quarantine started, I started going to therapy. I have a therapist, and we meet twice a week because I felt like it was a lot going on, and then even more stuff going on in the world. I decided to get mentally healthy. I'm physically getting myself together, but the mental piece was for me because sometimes you can go to church and you can have your church perspective, but then you're still stuck with the reality of what you went through. So how do I merge the two to become whole? And so really getting therapy and talking it out and just learning to forgive, learning to just not expect forgiveness from certain people, you know, it's real. So that for me has helped me to become a better man. I'm also a part of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. So being around older brothers has really tremendously helped me to see all different walks of life, you know, and how they are as men, you know, how they act, how they take care of their business. So being able to see that there, then I'm also a part of a men's group at church. I'm on the men's leadership team there, and it's so diverse. I go to a very diverse church here in Nashville, Bethel World Outreach, and seeing how white men, black men, Mexicans, Latinos, how they all handle their business is amazing. So just being able to see that and ask questions. I'm only 27. I'll be 28 July 6th. So being able to just ask questions, investments, stocks, how do I leave this legacy? The Bible tells us that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children, but how? I don't have a job making, 6 figures yet, but what should I be doing now? Working with what I have, investing stuff, real estate, stuff like that. So just being able to ask questions. I think a lot of times as men, we don't ask the right questions, or we don't ask questions, period. So if we just start asking questions, sometimes that'll spark the flame or spark a fire for you bettering yourself.
I think what's helped me better myself, and I wouldn't just say as a man, because my view on it is that everyone is themselves individually. So whoever you are, you can be whoever you want to be. But bettering myself, I just set goals and I make sure that I achieve them. Like I think that's that's what makes me better, I guess. Just making sure I do every step that needs to be taken.
This last question before I shift to the Black Boy Joy conversation, which I'm super excited to talk about. Isaac, I kind of want to start with you first on this question because I really am interested. I'm interested in everyone's opinion, but I'm really interested based off like the conversation that we've had so far, like what's your thoughts on this? So if you have children or plan to have children, how will you raise your children? And is there going to be a difference in how either values or how you raise your sons?
So I talk about this a lot with my girlfriend. We've been dating for 3 years. So like, children always come up and we're pretty much on the same. I think that's why we've met each other, right? And that's why we click, because we kind of on the same motion, right? I clearly have a very unique perspective on life, right? My biggest goal is that my kids understand that their ancestors was kidnapped from Africa and taken here to America on slave ships. They had a very small percent chance of surviving that ship ride and had a very small percent chance of surviving slavery. But yet here we are. We are the evidence of our ancestors and we owe it to them. African Americans here who live in America, we're playing America's system on the hardest difficulty. And I think that you owe it to your ancestors to be the greatest whoever you want to be. Anything else, I could care less about, what they choose to date, love, talk to. Of course, drugs is off the table. Bad things are off the table. But as long as they're truly trying their best to be whoever God wants them to be, or whoever they feel they want to be, I will be happy.
For me, I don't know if kids are in my future. For me, I identify as a queer male of color. And with that, it's just like, I don't know, if I end up with a wife, end up with a husband, and if I end up with a husband, like what that adoption process and stuff would be like, or a surrogate, all the extra stuff. So it's just like, for me, it's really kind of up in the air right now. But I would like to have children. And if I do have children, I'm kind of with Isaac, like definitely telling them like our history. Definitely starting back like when we were kings and queens before, like, we were kidnapped and brought here, everything that Isaac said. And just kind of just like let them know like how far we've come, but still how far, well, hopefully by then it's like we've made more strides, but I'm pretty sure we'll still have a lot more to go. But as far as like having a son, that's just like the world we're living in right now. It's just kind of like, who really wants to bring kids into this world right now anyways? Because it's just like so stressful just to think about, like, you're not even safe in your own home anymore. Like, they can just bust up in your house, kill you, and then they're like, oh, it's not our fault, when clearly you were the one who shot me. So it's just kind of like, just thinking about having kids, period, is just, it's mentally draining, because it's just like all of these what if scenarios are just kind of like popping in your head.
Oh, yeah, I guess I'll speak. I don't have kids right now, but me and my wife definitely want to have children. And I feel like there's different like stages of like how I would want to raise them. I don't think right off the gate, like I need to be telling them about like slavery at 3. But I feel like I want to just raise them with open communication. I feel like in the Black community, in history, we don't talk about our feelings enough, or we don't talk about how we hurt, or how I feel like we just don't, at least as Black men, stereotypically, I feel like we keep things bottled up. And I feel like if I was raising a son, I would just want to have a more open communication to say how he feels or what's going on in the world, and just lead with love and respect. And then really, leave everything up to God, to everything else. But I feel like if you lead with love and respect, we'll be off to a good start.
Well, as I stated earlier, I do have 2 children. I have my daughter, Genesis, with the J. She's 4 now. And my son, Brandon Jr., who is 3. And ever since day one, I've always treated them, I've treated them as I call them the prince and princess of this castle. And I let them know that they are royalty. And I let them know that they have a purpose in life all the time. I tell them that you're brave, you're smart, and most importantly, and they respond, I'm a leader. So they know from day one who they are, their identity, and I try not to allow things that they watch or things that they are most interested in to define their identity as being who they are or what they desire or want to be in life. I keep an open concept to life. So we are around families that are white. We're around families that are Latino. We're around, or of the Hispanic culture. We're around different families all the time. And my daughter is in private school. And my son will be going to private school as well. So that's a whole other situation in itself. I just want them to have the best. I tell my wife all the time that anything that is remotely close to the struggle that I faced, I cringe. So my ideal and my goal is to ensure that they have a good life. And however that comes, if they ask, hey, can I go play soccer? Let's make sure everyone is safe, but let's go play soccer. Even if I got 10,000 things to do, I'm going to always make sure my children are taken care of and that I'm present physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and financially in their life. Because I didn't have that, and I believe that would have made a world of difference for me. And some people could say that's privilege for them, but at the end of the day, it's just me helping create my legacy.
So let's shift our conversation to Black Boy Joy, a topic that I'm extremely excited to talk about. Before we get started, I do want to give a basic definition for the audience. So Black Boy Joy did start off as a hashtag on social media, but it's developed into so much more. It's an idea and celebration of Black boys and men in all of their glory. So the hashtag specifically will show men being joyful, smiling, showcasing emotion, and enjoying and being celebrated for just being their authentic self. So with that, let's talk about moments when each of you guys have experienced Black Boy Joy. Just moments in your life where you can think back and be like, you know what, that was Black Boy Joy.
I feel like when I graduated from college, that was Black Boy Joy. I guess I really want to talk about like the term Black Boy Joy, because I feel like it's a new thing. Like
it is
Black girl magic, Black girl joy, like that whole concept. I feel like when it first came out, I feel like it was for people that weren't of color, to show them that, hey, we have joy, we have love, we are multifaceted people. And I feel like it was for other people, because in my family, I knew we had joy. I didn't need a hashtag to say, oh, my grandmother smiles when I walk in the door, or all these things. So I feel like it was created like a more of a marketing tactic, like to show other people, to humanize us, like to more like prominent cultures as like more white people, to say, oh, look, Black Boy Joy, what's that thing? Oh, they actually smile, they're actually happy, they're not the stereotypical thug that I see on TV all the time. So I think we first need to start with what the definition of the Black boy joy. I have it. I think we've probably always had joyful moments in our lives. Like me getting married, that was like a very joyful moment. Graduation, that was a very joyful moment. But I feel like hashtag culture is really can get very multifaceted and sometimes be very marketable. And I feel like we need to be careful when we look into these hashtags.
I agree. I personally did not agree with the hashtag when it first came out, and still, quite frankly, I don't use it because the word boy is inside of it, so that already is a turnoff for me. And then, just like I feel like my entire life is joyful. Even if I'm struggling, I still find joy in it. So I can't say that there's just one specific time in my life where I had joy. I've had joy when I was eating ramen noodles and hot Cheetos. I've had joy, and that's a good meal, by the way. But I've had joy in the most craziest situations. You know what I'm saying? Like not having my own bed, being verbally and mentally abused. I guess I never got with it, and I don't know if I ever will, but it is what it is. It says, I believe what Ryan said is a social media marketing tool, and JB, I think you can speak to it more because you're in PR. It's just something that they use to highlight or track us down to see how good we are in life, when in actuality we've been great. It's just you try to oppress us, but that's another conversation.
I don't know if I completely agree with that. Just in a sense that, okay, so we just spoke about how boys are taught to be kind of like emotionless, right? So when you have that moment of joy where you're just excited or you're so proud of yourself that you're crying, it's like everyone allows you to cry for the first time. Usually you get told that you can't cry. That's what women do. But this moment of time, you're able to cry. And it's like you're taking your innocence back. Your innocence was taken away from you. I don't know. You can look at it in different perspectives, right? Like you look at it like, oh, you're calling him a boy. I'm looking at it like, it's finally good that at least we're seeing images where people are happy as opposed to the news saying that this person deserves to die because they had this track record, So I don't know. But my Black boy joy moment was I think getting a scholarship to college and being able to show it to my mother, and it was a full ride to University of Kentucky. My mother just breaking down into tears because she was just like, you always said you was gonna make it something happen, make something shake, and you really did. So that was my Black boy joy. So anytime my mom cries in my life, whenever I'm doing anything, that's my Black boy joy.
I guess for me, it's kind of like Ryan and Isaac. Like it goes back to college, like getting a full ride to college and then graduating college, especially after like having to do a victory lap and having to do 5 years of college. It was just kind of like that moment of kind of like, oh my gosh, I did it. Like so I told you all earlier, like my mom was one of 20, and then I'm one of, I think it's 58 or 59 grandkids. I'm the youngest because my mom was like one of the younger kids, so she had me in her 30s. So like all of my first cousins are like 40 and 50, and they're like older. So like out of all the grandkids, I'm the only male to have a college degree. So like out of all my uncles and my grandparents and my mom and my dad, and it was just kind of like one of those like proud moments. Like I feel like I broke like a generational curse, so to speak. So that was like my Black boy joy moment.
Yeah, I think I had originally asked this question. So again, we're on different thoughts on this, but I completely agree with everything everyone's pretty much said. I asked this question because I think it kind of speaks to the polar opposite, at least in the Black community, of toxic masculinity, in the sense I get more of how Isaac was talking about, like, smiling, showing emotion, like you're being your authentic self in that moment, at least from what I've seen. I remember when I first saw the hashtag, I think the first video I saw was of a younger gentleman in New Orleans, and he was like marching in one of those you know, when they have the band in New Orleans and the white flags and umbrellas, and he was just dancing as happy as he could be, showing his moves, everything, and just being in that moment, him being able to be happy, his authentic self, show the world like his talent. Like that's what I get from Black Boy Joy. But I also agree with you guys on the notion that we've always been joyful. Like that's just something that is showcased in a sense for others. But I also do think it still needs to be highlighted in a sense, because it makes it okay. It makes it okay for people who may not feel like, hey, I can be joyful, I can show emotion. So I think it's a double-sided coin. Well, you guys, I want to ask, where do we go from here as a society? I mean, we talked about a lot today. We were all had different opinions on the topic, specifically toxic masculinity. I think looking at all of you guys and getting to know all of you guys, or knowing some of you guys, none of you outwardly display toxic masculinity or toxic as men. So for those instances where there is toxic masculinity, or there are toxic men who may put down women, or who may discourage men in a sense, where do we go, or what is some lasting words for them?
I would say take a step back and really redefine what you're trying to say, because I think sometimes words can get mixed up, right? And take a step back and then try to eradicate the terminology manhood, because I don't think everything is meant for it. I just think it's just a perfect word or phrase to put there. So just try to take a step back and really ask yourself, am I being a man, before I judge the next man? And how are my actions impacting the next person? I think that, to me, is how we move forward. Continue to define it within ourselves first, and then if we feel, or if that next person feels the need or they want help, then try to help that individual. But take a step back.
I agree with that. I also would say to somebody that's being like having a toxic masculinity, I would say like you say, take a step back, but like give yourself grace. There, you can always do better. There isn't a timeline of when you should be doing things, because everybody's on different pages. So you can always do better. Learn from your mistakes. That's what a wise man does. They learn from others and learn from their mistakes. So I would say, you know, hey, whatever toxic thing they were doing, you know, being abusive, all these things, hey, address it head on. This isn't what you need to do, and you know, we just move on to the next day to fight another fight.
Kind of agree. I mean, I think the best way for us to, you know, move on, just to fight the toxic masculinity, is for us to all to accept that even if we don't mean to be, like we're just being assertive or whatever, sometimes it's hard to say this as a Black man, but as a man, we do have some shape or form of privilege, and we have to understand that even when we're not trying to be, or even when we think we're not, like I would 100% love to say I'm not toxic. I have toxic masculinity traits, but I do, and it's just inherited in my privilege, and I have to accept that. And I have to check myself from time to time, and when someone is clearly telling me that they're uncomfortable of something that I've done, then I have to own that. And I think that's the best way for us to move on, is to accept that you're not perfect. It's okay not to be perfect, and it's okay to learn from others.
I like that. I will also say, for anyone that watches this and they are struggling with identifying manhood or creating that definition for themselves, to really just get into a place, not really isolated, but get into a place to where you can just really meditate and really think about all the things and all the traits that you possess, and then embrace it. Because like we said, masculinity is so different for Ryan, for Jupiter, and for Isaac. Like it looks totally different. But how do you embrace it, and how do you move forward? That's what you have to establish for yourself, and not really put a picture up and say, oh, this is what I'm going to be. This is what the world said. Because you're going to fail. I still don't have the muscular body that the world says a masculine man is. I still don't have it. I want it. I want it bad. I want the six pack. I want it all, but I don't have it yet. But does that mean I'm not a man? No.
you just got to be open to get educated. Because if someone brings something to your attention, because it's like if you're not self-aware, you're not going to know. So just kind of like if someone says that you are, you just have to be open to, educate yourself. Like, oh, is that what this is? Okay, well, what can I do to fix it? Just don't get offensive. Just, just sit there and learn. Everybody got to learn something.
Yeah. Right.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining me today. This was an important topic. This was heavy on my heart that I wanted to do. I definitely wanted to get some men in and talk about some topics and discussions. So thank you again for joining me. For anyone that's out there listening, again, just like any other topic, this discussion does not stop right here. Continue to be encouraged to have these discussions, talk through them, figure out what your relationship is, how you may display toxic masculinity, question just how you want to be seen as an individual. It doesn't have to be as a man or a woman, just as an individual. So again, thank you guys so much. I do want to give you guys the opportunity. If there's any projects that you guys are working on that you would like to share with the audience, anything that you guys have coming in the works or that you're doing right now that you guys would like to share.
I do want to say thank you, Micaiah, for inviting us onto this platform and having these wonderful conversations that just need to be had, especially in the state of the world that we're in right now. I just want to thank you. I hope this helps other people and continue to have these conversations on and offline. So thanks.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm super appreciative. It was definitely blind shot when you asked me to come on. So I'm so appreciative of the opportunity. I am also working on our family YouTube page at Haskins Family TV. So, go on over there once you leave this page and like, subscribe, and share as well. And I'm also working on the coaching business as well, life coaching business. So.
I just want to say thank you as well. This was definitely a great conversation. Lots of different insights. As far as for me, you can just follow me on Instagram or Twitter. Jupiter, like the planet, BAMN, Jupiter Bam. I have a YouTube page that hopefully I'll be launching pretty soon with some content. It'll be choreography videos and music covers and original content, and also fashion advice. So just stay tuned via my Instagram and Twitter for when that drops.
So I also want to thank you, Micaiah. I love the fact that you was able to, get a bunch of men who have, different viewpoints, and everyone's ideas are respected. As far as projects, I don't really have a main project. I just would like to tell everyone, please look into home ownership. I got into it and I'm purchasing my own home, and I didn't realize how important, it was always a goal for me to purchase a home, but how important it is to express to Black people that we need to buy our homes. I can't go into full details, of course, in my short little snippet, but please purchase a home and look into it. It's very possible. If you're struggling in any shape or form, please reach out to me on any Instagram account, phone number, anything, and I'll give you any details from credit scores to the home buying process.
I'm really big into health and wellness. I changed my diet 3 years ago and lost 60 pounds. And I used to do a juicing business, but with everything that's going on with Corona, it's just, and a lot of my clientele was in Louisville, and I live like an hour and a half away from Louisville now, so I don't do that anymore. But if you are interested in looking at like health stuff or more plant-based diet, my Instagram is Dixon Nutrition, Dixon_nutrition.
Well, again, gentlemen, thank you again so much. And thank you for the audience who is viewing this. Make sure that you go and subscribe to my channel. We have so many other episodes coming up in the Being Becoming series. Again, this is all about self-growth and reflection, so you don't want to miss out. Thank you, guys.